Chapter 8, Escape into the Mirror. For a moment, Yumi felt the tears threaten to come. Her parents. Ulrich's father. These three funny secret agents. They had all been captured. What would they do to them? Would they assassinate them? Professor Hertz was pressed against the metal door, looking on with worry through to the other side of the small window. Odd and Richard showed up running side by side with more hooks and helped her to completely seal the entrance of the refrigerator room. They won't be able to get in through here anymore, Odd declared, satisfied. I'm worried this will only gain us a few minutes, Hertz commented, lowering her head. The professor hurried to tell them what had happened. She and the others had gone from the basement up to the garage where they were confronted by the first soldiers on guard, which provoked a violent shootout. The men in black moved to the living room of the Hermitage, and Yumi's parents and Walter Stern tried to reach the garden, while she stayed in rearguard to defend the only doorway to the underground. And this was what had saved her. From her position, she saw the others lay down their weapons, and the Green Phoenix soldiers tie them up and gag them. Her only option left was to return and rejoin the kids. Yumi was still in a state of shock. She hadn't moved. In front of her, the large door to the room shook under the blows of the terrorists on the other side. What do we do now? Asked Richard. Nothing. All that's left we can do is surrender. How are you progressing with the scanner? These words reawoke Yumi's sense of self-control. This wasn't the time to worry. They needed to act, and now. There's still another exit, the young girl murmured. Things changed. XANA is helping us. Odd and I can virtualize ourselves into the mirror where he and Aelita are. Afterwards, you can destroy the scanner. Then, Mago's men won't be able to bring us back in. What are you talking about? Cried Odd. You want to abandon Richard, Jeremy's dad, and the professor here? Hertz motioned for him to stop. It's a good idea, but we need to act fast. The small group returned to the secret room where Michael continued to maintain his connection to Aelita. Yumi explained the situation to him in several words. All right, her friend approved from within the mirror. Here with me, you'll be safe. We even found a way to join up with Eva and Ulrich on Lyoko. XANA nodded from beside her. I will protect you from the Green Phoenix. I'm sorry that you'll have to stay here, said Yumi while she turned to Hertz. I promise that we'll find a way to save you from this mess. Clearly, everything has fallen back into your hands, children, the professor responded, shrugging her shoulders. The helicopter flew over the city. Dido checked her watch, 8 minutes until 1 in the morning. The journey from Washington had lasted longer than foreseen after the boss of the Men in Black had to make a pit stop at Brussels to drop off Maggie at the Central European headquarters. It was a necessary detour in order to coordinate the operation and give out several important directives. And she had also taken advantage of the situation in order to switch her means of transportation. The helicopter was a swift and speedy Eurocopter EC-135, as pitch black as the dark of the night surrounding it. On board, in addition to Dido and the pilot, were 5 agents. All were clothed the same way, in black suits with sunglasses on despite how dark it was inside the cabin. They had shaved heads, and their faces seemed emotionless, as if they were sculpted out of granite. They were the cream of the crop. They would be useful. Dido concentrated her attention on the city that unfolded beneath them. The roads shone with a carpet of light cut in half by the dark strip of river flowing in between. This is where the factory was located, shining on its own in the middle of its small island, and a bit further away was the Caddick campus. A phone started to ring. Dido searched through her small bag, took out the device and observed the screen. It was Maggie. Tell me everything, she said. Ma'am, I have a call for you on hold. From Hannibal Mago. Dido let out a sigh. She hadn't yet arrived, and problems were already cropping up. I'll take the call, she murmured. A moment later, she heard a click and an acerbic, masculine voice. Welcome to Paris, my friend. Dido wasn't surprised that Mago had discovered her position. This man had money and power, and in order to fly a helicopter over the city, she needed to receive a ton of authorization. Which is why she had no choice but to ask him, in an abrupt, assertive manner, what it was he desired. I have several urgent updates. Some of your men, with a handful of, parents of students at Katic attacked my location at the Hermitage tonight. My men captured them in several minutes. I already gave you a warning once, and I advise that you don't try to free them or attack the Hermitage. I've restarted work on Project Carthage. Dido was paralyzed. Carthage, the most terrifying weapon ever created by mankind, was now in the hands of a crazy, immoral terrorist. I have a small project in mind, Mago continued. Conquering the world. After tomorrow, at midnight on the dot, I will use the supercomputer to stop all air traffic in France. I will then block all communications, radio, telephone, internet, absolutely everything. And I will continue to do so until the government satisfies my demands. Dido understood that this tyrant in power wanted her to ask him what his demands were, but she didn't want to give him the satisfaction. She waited instead until the terrorist began to speak again. I want the parliament to name me president with full powers. If not, I'll see to it that France is plunged into chaos. Think wisely, Dido. I could paralyze the hospitals, the police, and even the army. I can reduce the nation to ashes. The woman felt a shiver run up her spine. She tried to reply, but before she had the chance, the phone began to emit a deep beep 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 indicating the end of the call. Michael Belpois straightened the computer. Odds there, he announced. Yumi approached the scanner and brushed the tips of her fingers past the luminous text that cautioned against use by adults. The door out was there, but only she and Odd could use it. The sliding doors that closed off the column opened with a whish, revealing a narrow, cylindrical space that was completely empty inside. Her friend was in the mirror. The young girl turned towards the refrigerator room. From where she stood, she couldn't see Hertz or Richard, but she could clearly hear the noises of muffled cries and dull bangs against the large metal door. How much longer could they resist? What would happen to them next? Jeremy's father gave her a timid smile. Don't worry about us, he whispered to her. As soon as you're virtualized into the mirror, I will destroy the logical components of the scanner and any other fundamental pieces as well. After all, it was me who built this machine. Afterwards, we'll surrender, let the terrorists enter, and give ourselves to them hands up. They won't hurt us, you'll see. That's what I hope. Yumi replied to him. Mr. Belpois took her hand. You heard Aelita. My son, Jeremy, is well, just like your friends, Ulrich and Eva. That's all that counts. They heard a loud crash arise from the cold room, the noise of a wall on the verge of being bust down. The door's about to give way. Yumi heard Richard's voice. The young girl looked decidedly at Michael Belpois and raised her hand to give a farewell. Then, she entered the column, and it closed behind her. Ready for virtualization, exclaimed the man, his voice resonating from the speakers of the scanner. 3, 2, 1. Yumi closed her eyes and felt an invisible energy lift her into the air until her feet separated from the floor. A strong wind ruffled her dark black hair, then the young girl felt the sense of tingling once more throughout her body. It only lasted an instant. After that, Yumi's feet fell back to the ground. Everything around her had changed. She found herself in a narrow street between several houses. Above her head, the sky was still dark, meaning that it was early in the morning. Odd looked at her with a smile on his face. The boy was no longer wearing his wetsuit. In its place, he had on a pair of purple overalls that were tight against his body, with a long tail, and his hands were covered with gloves with sharp claws. On his face appeared the usual lilac stripes befitting of his catboy avatar. Yumi could also sense that she had transformed. She was wearing a kimono that was tied around the waist in Japanese sandals. Her hair was held back in a complicated hairstyle supported by chopsticks, and she felt the soothing weight of her warrior fans that she kept at her back. "I'm having a bit of déjà vu," she commented. Only a few days had passed since she and Odd had been virtualized for the first time into the mirror in this exact spot. Yumi knew that they would come across a tired-looking man leafing through a newspaper while leaving the street. He had a copy of The Investigator dated June 1, 1994. "What do we do?" he asked his friend, cheerful as usual. Yumi shrugged her shoulders, slightly offended. They had just abandoned their parents, their science teacher, Richard and Michael Belpois, as well as the 3 secret agents. How could he be so peaceful in a time like this? "Hurry up," responded the young girl. "We need to make it to the bar where Hertz is talking with Dido. The mirror command box materializes there, and then—" "That won't be needed," Aelita interrupted her. The young girl ran to hug her friends. XANA handed them a pair of blue, plastic boxes. "We thought that it'd be best to speed things up," he explained to them. "Here." The soldiers stormed into the refrigerator room upon demolishing the door. "I surrender," yelped Richard. "We surrender. Don't hurt us." Professor Hertz left her weapon on the ground and observed the soldiers in total calmness. To her side, Michael Belpois seemed a bit worried, and his hands were stained with grease. Taking apart and destroying the key pieces of the scanner had proved more complicated than he had foreseen. The first to enter the refrigerator room was Grigory Nyctopoulos. His thin face was marred by fatigue and rage. He shoved Richard aside so hard that it propelled him into the wall, and approached Hertz next with a defiant air. "Where are the kids?" he asked. "I know very well they came here too." Hertz didn't budge, and Richard admired the woman's composure. "They escaped," she responded. "To a place where you couldn't capture them." Grigory leaned over to look into the secret room, and gave a sarcastic smirk. "How great. You sent them to Lyoko, huh? Perfect. In that case, we can go look for them whenever we want." As the man spoke, Richard could clearly see his icy eyes. They seemed like those of a shark, a merciless predator. Chapter 9, The Breach to Lyoko. Jeremy felt dead beat. He couldn't even remember when he'd last slept, and, after another night in front of the computer, he felt like his eyes were about to burst. For an instant his thoughts turned back to his mother, who had always told him not to spend too much time playing video games, because it isn't good for his health. He gave a hint of a smile. His mother had been right. But right now, he wasn't playing. This was very serious business. Memory and the boy exited the elevator on the ground floor of the factory. Jeremy blinked several times, realizing that daytime had arrived hours ago. Through the large windows came a gray and milky light. There were dust motes floating and spinning in the air from where they stood to the emerald green, nomadic tent. A noise caught his attention, and Jeremy turned his head in the direction of the new platforms that joined the lower floor with the entrance, which was higher up at the end of the bridge. The child thought he was dreaming for a moment. Maybe it was a hallucination due to fatigue. But no, he wasn't hallucinating. Grigory Nyctopoulos was at the head of the procession, followed by Professor Hertz, who was walking as stiffly as a plank of wood, hands tied behind her back and dressed in a grotesque, form-fitting wetsuit. Behind her were the Ishiyamas, then Richard. And a little further behind. No, it was impossible. His father. And 3 square-jawed men who looked very light-headed. They had been caught. "Dad!" cried Jeremy. He saw him look down with a surprised expression that was immediately replaced with a sad smile. Jeremy noticed that someone had given him a black eye. Grigory began to laugh. The boy struggled greatly to not respond to the provocation. If he did, he would pay dearly in one way or another. "Memory, are you there?" a voice came from the inside of the green tent. "Enter, and bring that pretentious boy with you." "Let's go," whispered the woman into Jeremy's ear. The tent was luxurious, decorated as if it were made from Persian rugs with gold thread woven into them, and soft cushions decorated with complex embroidery. Hannibal Mago chewed on a bunch of grapes. He had changed his clothes. He was now wearing a striped canary yellow suit with a hat, vest and cravat in the same color. Even his silk socks were yellow. The man noticed Jeremy's surprise. "I'm wearing yellow because I'm in a good mood. Today is a very important day for the Green Phoenix." He searched through the interior pocket of his vest and took out a small, black plastic box. It had a single button covered by a small, transparent cover. Mago fiddled with the object with his ring-covered fingers. "Well," he exclaimed. "You see this little detonator? In Lyoko, XANA's powers are almost unlimited. He can even take control of my mind. What's more, he's already threatened to do so. But this little box puts he and I on equal footing. If I press this button, I will extinguish the supercomputer, and that will allow me to eliminate XANA if he chooses to oppose my plans." Jeremy's heart began to beat at 1,000 miles an hour. If Mago was capable of forcing XANA to help him, he and his friends would have no chance of getting out of it. From now on, the man continued, "I'm forbidding you from going down to the underground floors of the factory until further notice. I have other plans in mind for the supercomputer." "What must we do, sir?" Memory asked. "I've already prepared a station and equipment for you. It's in the director's office of this shed. From this moment forward, the two of you will work on decrypting the computer codes full-time. They could contain a weapon. And in that case, I want it to belong to me." In the mirror, Aelita and Yumi were sitting on the floor in front of the extinguished supercomputer terminal. Odd was crouching on the spinning chair, and the three held blue command boxes in their hands. At their sides, XANA levitated about 10 centimeters above the floor, legs crossed and looking like a serene, concentrating Hindu monk in his yoga position. Above his head floated a sphere of light that illuminated the nearby surrounding parts of the room, the rest of which was as dark as the mouth of a wolf. Aelita observed her friends one by one. She was so happy that they were with her, and felt that she didn't have time to lose. Odd and Yumi had told her the latest news. The situation was moving towards a very critical point. "Ulrich and Eva are safe," XANA said. "If you want, I can establish a connection bridge with them so you can talk." Aelita noticed Yumi's eyes brighten with enthusiasm, and so she decided to suggest a more important plan of action. "Wait," she said. "The first thing we need to do is decide how to attack the terrorists. We need Jeremy." Yumi frowned. Aelita knew that she had been waiting to talk to Ulrich. "Of course." Odd, on the other hand, approved enthusiastically. "We need to take them by surprise, attack them, destroy them, and chase them out of Paris for good." Okay, hero," Yumi replied. "But what do you intend to do?" Well, I'm not sure. That's why we need to call Jeremy." XANA explained to them that he had tried to contact the boy through his other half, the one in Lyoko, but that he hadn't succeeded. Mago in person was now the person working at the supercomputer command post. "So, what will our next move be?" asked Odd. "Get out of here," Aelita decided after a moment's thought. "I'm sick of being stuck in the mirror." "The only way to escape this place," XANA explained, "is to create a portal that links the Lyoko of the past to the one of the present. I haven't yet succeeded, because there's one small problem. In the mirror, Lyoko only exists when this factory's supercomputer is up and running. That's why I'm going to need all of your help at the same time. And we need to be extremely coordinated. You're going to need to use your command boxes to turn the supercomputer on and work the command post. This way, Aelita and I will use the scanners to enter the Lyoko of 1994. Once there, we'll go into one of the towers, and from there, we can create an access. But if we do it like that, Yumi and I will be stuck here." Odd protested. "I have a better idea in mind," XANA replied with a smile. "With my powers and Aelita's help, I can create a bridge from the Lyoko inside the mirror to this part of the mirror, and through it we can pass through to the real Lyoko, the one from your present. If you say so, commented Odd with a raised eyebrow and suspicious tone. But all that's just gobbledygook to me, man. You aren't really making a mess of. And you? Aelita asked XANA, drawing the topic away from Odd's paranoia. She had her own doubts. In the Lyoko of the present, there's already a XANA, so what will happen to you? Will you disappear? I'll simply fuse with the other part of myself and become a single entity again. The XANA that currently lives in Lyoko is much more powerful than I, but he's missing something, his human part, in other words, me. Odd and Yumi looked at him in stupor. I believe that Aelita, XANA added after a deep breath, has awoken something in me that I didn't even think I had. It's not easy for me to explain, but I'm convinced that the emotions I'm feeling exterminated the castle's virus. If I'm the antidote, when I unite with XANA's central core, I can also heal that part of me. The boy stopped speaking. He couldn't explain what he was thinking, and that had never happened to him before. This time he'd spent imprisoned in the mirror with Aelita had changed him. He had discovered emotions he had never before experienced: friendship, longing to help someone, courage, and even fear. Hannibal Mago could turn the supercomputer off at any moment, and he didn't want to be deactivated. He was risking everything to help these children. I think I understand what you're trying to say, Aelita said, smiling. The part of you in Lyoko isn't yet complete, because he's missing a fundamental piece: humanity. XANA's humanity, you who is now here with us, in the mirror, and is saving us. That's why, when you reunite with your other half, you'll become a complete human being. You may not have a body and flesh and blood like ours, but that doesn't mean much. Inside, you will be human. Aelita stood and approached the young man, who was still floating in the air, and took his hand. Yumi smiled and copied her friend. Odd regarded XANA, somewhat surprised. Bah, why not? He said finally. Here's my hand. The four children were now side by side, hand in hand. XANA felt the warmth of human skin as well as a different, more intense warmth. A form of mysterious energy that grew within him, bringing him a sense of peace. Hannibal Mago was a very dangerous man, but they were children and they were together. They could succeed. XANA smiled. Although he couldn't know it, that was his first human smile. Dido's helicopter had brought blankets, fuel for the generators and other products of utmost importance. With these provisions and the crates of equipment Lone Wolf had already brought, the situation at Kadik grew more normal again. The students had returned to their rooms and Principal Delmas had given the order for classes to start back up again. The men in black were now patrolling the park to ensure the Green Phoenix didn't play any tricks on them. Dido herself had set up in the science laboratory. There were computers, an ADSL internet connection, and everything she'd need to contact headquarters in Brussels and manage her men's operations. Mago's threat weighed on her head like the sword of Damocles. Dido had known this man for a long time, and she knew that he was capable of going through with his plan. But she also knew that he wouldn't be happy with conquering just one nation. Other countries would meet the same fate as France, until Mago succeeded in forcing all the world's governments to bend to his will. The woman momentarily concentrated on the warm light that filtered through the laboratory windows. It really didn't seem like winter. It was much warmer in Paris than in Washington. Dido hadn't visited this place in years, and she would have liked to wander around the streets in the city center, drink an exquisite hot chocolate in one of the charming bistros, the typical small cafes here, and maybe later go to a museum. What a shame she didn't have the time. If she didn't find a solution fast, nobody would be drinking hot chocolate for quite a while. Somebody knocked at the door. "Come in," Dido said, taking off the headphones and microphone that she used for video conferences. It was the principal. Mr. Delmas was a short, plump man with gray hair, a well-kept beard and small, square-shaped glasses. Dido immediately remarked that he appeared to be intimidated. The woman tried to give him an encouraging smile. "Can I do something for you?" "Actually, yes," the man responded. "I wanted to know how things are going. If you had some kind of plan." Dido felt the expression on her face harden. She knew that this conversation would come sooner or later, but she would have been happy to delay it further. She was about to give the principal a fistful of bad news. "I spent the whole morning talking to representatives from the French government, the army, and even the UN, and they all agreed on one thing: we can't give the terrorists what they want." Dido breathed deeply. Principal Delmas was standing beside her, his back slightly hunched. This is the part where the complicated business comes in. Mago is a madman, and to him, conquering France will only be the start of it. If we accept his conditions, the Green Phoenix will plunge the entire planet into absolute chaos. We can't allow this to happen. The government has charged me with the difficult task of talking with him again, and trying to convince him to negotiate. If he doesn't accept my proposition, what will happen then? Asked Delmas in a soft voice. We'll need to stop him from fulfilling his threats, and as such will be forced to attack before midday tomorrow. My agents are already set to begin. We'll use every last resort to conquer the factory. We'll do as much as we can to succeed and avoid having to turn to our alternative. What alternative? Dido let out a sigh. Our reserve plan, in case our first attempt fails. We're thinking about an aerial attack to bombard the factory. This way, Professor Hopper's invention will be destroyed and we will be safe. But you can't do that, the principal exclaimed. Professor Hertz and the rest of the parents could be in the factory. And maybe even my students. Believe me, unfortunately, I know that all too well. But we have no other choice, Dido responded. However, I guarantee that we're going to do everything in our power to get them to a safe place first. They split up. Odd went down to the bottom floor of the factory to lower the lever that started the supercomputer. Yumi remained on the first floor to control the command post. XANA and Aelita both went to the second floor, where the scanner columns were located. These three columns, placed in the center of the room like points on a triangle, seemed like rigid, upside-down metal trees rooted to the ceiling by an inextricable system of cables and tubes. The room was submerged in darkness, but XANA brightened it with the small sphere of light, which now floated above the palm of his hand. Deep down, Aelita felt that everything would be fine. They were reunited once again, and they would soon be with the others on Lyoko. In reality, they were still missing Jeremy, but the boy would surely find a way to give them a hand from the factory. The lights on the second floor suddenly turned on, making the walls shine with a delicate tone of color somewhere between yellow and orange. Aelita heard Yumi's voice, coming from the speakers hidden in the ceiling. Odd did it, she exclaimed. The instruments on the terminal are working. Now I can virtualize you onto the Lyoko of 1994, so, get ready. Sorry if I'm a bit slow at this, it's not easy to use the computer while I'm holding a box in my hand. Aelita and XANA laughed before heading to the two nearest columns. See you on the other side, whispered Aelita as she entered the blinding light that shone from inside the column. The transformation was very different compared to what she remembered. She felt no wind coming from the floor of the scanner, nor the familiar tingling sensation. She simply blinked twice and found herself on Lyoko. She was in the ice sector, which was covered in a thick blanket of very white snow. Above her head, there was a navy blue sky so dark it almost looked black. An instant later, XANA appeared beside her. Curious, murmured the young man. The mirror's passage to Lyoko is different to what I'd imagined. The mirror, Aelita began, nodding pensively, is based on my father's memories, and he hadn't the slightest idea what virtualization really felt like. The girl held a hand out in front of her. Far off on the horizon, they could see a white tower sticking out of the middle of the snowy desert like a finger pointing towards the sky. We need to get over there, correct? She said. So, in that case, let's get a move on.
So what we learned today is that the Lyoko warriors were able to get away and are about to reunite, while the adults are captured by the Green Phoenix. Great. I do have high hopes for XANA becoming fully human in the end and becoming an ally. So I know it's sudden given the weight of what's currently going on, but I wanted to get back into making this just to get it over with. What with YouTube system of auto-detecting copyright content, I was planning on making more of Yu-Gi-Oh! Dual Dimensions, but I'm being very hesitant on using the show music. But with my editing skills, I hope it might work out well either way. So, what will happen next on Lyoko? Hopefully we'll get to find out in the next episode. And subscribe and be sure to tune in for more episodes. And I'll see you all later.